Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling. I shall see what's going on a lovely island of Fawnhallow today. Well, I know in the previous episode, I said I was going to be talking about the holiday, but I'm actually going to talk about the Book of Mormon musical instead. Also, no stream today because I woke up and I had a sore throat, and I was like, okay, let's not stream. So I guess you'll find out about this late. I don't know. Anywho, yes, the Book of Mormon musical, as you can tell from the title. I'd like to preface by saying that I am a British-born Chinese person, so I have basically no connections whatsoever to, Mormonism or, anything to do with that culture, or anything to do with Ugandan culture, mind you, which are, the two places really portrayed. I guess Orlando as well, but that's only for a fleeting moment. So really I have no connection, and I'm not even going to pretend that I have any sort of decent understanding of either two. So of course take everything I say with a grain of salt. I'm mainly just going to be talking sort of musically about it, but of course there'll be overarching topics as well. I mean, it's kind of difficult to talk about this without actually talking about these political and cultural things tied within the movie itself, the musical itself. But anyway, hello there everyone, right now in Fawnhallow. It's 5:52 p.m. on Sunday, September 1st, 2024. So happy 1st of September, and happy tomorrow being my birthday, I suppose. Excuse me. So yeah, I have a little bit of a, I hope it's not a sickness, but we'll see. Definitely sore throat. So it's at least something. Sorry, let me blow my nose. Lovely. Yeah, so basically going to be talking about the Book of Mormon musical today, because I saw it yesterday. It was not actually my birthday yesterday, but we were doing our celebratory this is the birthday celebration. We normally do it on the closest weekend, because my actual birthday falls on a weekday, which I do have a day off, but I don't expect my friends to have a day off, so that is why. But yeah, so we watched the Book of Mormon musical. We also had Hot Pot in London, a place which is very close to where the West End theatres. But yeah, the Book of Mormon musical is a musical that's been out for 10 years now or something. It's quite an old one, and it's written by the people. I'm not sure of exactly everyone who made South Park, but I think Trey Parker, is that his name? Book of Mormon musical. Was Trey Parker and Matt Stone, yeah, but these are the two South Park people, right? Yeah. Who wrote it, and what would I say overall? I think overall it was an enjoyable musical to watch, but with a preface that it's definitely got big sort of South Park energy, so its humour definitely lands on the sort of edgier side. It's if you don't know what South Park is, I'm not so edgy is quite the right word. It definitely is edgy, I suppose, but it's much more it's probably the epitome of a cartoon which has no sacred cows, which the fair point, no sacred cows in comedy, that sort of thing, but also counterpoint, know your audience, and not even if there's no sacred cows, there are still good jokes and bad jokes, right? Things in good faith and things in bad faith, I suppose. Anyway, not the point. The point is, South Park tends to definitely not shy away from much more darker humour, I suppose, which is, sort of like their bread and butter. I'm not saying that's necessarily a good or bad thing. I think that's more darker humour, I think, or, gallows humour, as sometimes it's called, is much more up to the person themselves to sort of deduce and decide where they draw the line on certain things, or where they're oh, this is, I find this funny, but I find this inappropriate, etc., etc. Everyone's got their own different measures, and I think that's fine. That's kind of how it should be. Everyone's got their own different sort of perspectives on things which are relevant and okay with them, and things which are not. That's just kind of how it ends up being, and I think if you ever create something, I suppose, which is definitely sort of pushing the boundaries, pushing the lines, towing the lines of these sort of boundaries that people have, inevitably some people are going to be upset by it, inevitably some people are going to not see what the big deal is. I'm not really here to dive into that sort of what controversial humour should be appropriate or not, because I don't think I'm well equipped enough to at least discuss it in the context of Book of Mormon. So I'll just sort of say overarching is yes, it's probably not really the most politically correct cartoon. It doesn't really have a great portrayal of Uganda, I don't think. I don't know if it has a great portrayal of Mormonism either. I don't really know anything about Mormonism, nor Uganda, as I say. So anyway, that's that sort of out of the way. Now I'm going to sort of be talking much more sort of musically and not sort of thematically and story-wise for it. It's meant to be a comedy. Like, as I say, it's a dark comedy, sort of edgy comedy, dark comedy. Because when I say dark comedy, that makes it sound like it's like straight up gallows humor, which it kind of is, but it also kind of is, I don't know. I'm not sure how to describe it. Blue humor, black and blue humor. Maybe that's how I describe it. It's entertaining, I've said. Like, I'm actually surprised like how fun it was musically. Like, it felt like it very played into the musical sort of tropes and sort of like overemphasized them in a very like over the top theatrical way, and ended up like working a lot for it because it felt such like a theatrical performance in the first place. Like, that's so stupid to say about like a literal theatrical performance, but I don't know how to say it except for it's like it's very willing to sort of play into these tropes and like poke fun at itself, its subject matter, everything basically. And as I say, no holds barred, everything gets kind of like made fun of. And with a case of most humour things, and especially with this one being much more like black and blue humour, which isn't always to my tastes, but sometimes can be. Some of the humour did work for me, some of the humour didn't work for me, but the songs I thought in general were like really quite good, most of them. Like Hello is the sort of like icon. Hold on, Book of Mormon songs, and let me get up a track list. Why has this only got the 4 songs? Complete guide to all songs in Book of Mormon. Okay, so we start off with Hello. That's a very iconic one, and honestly probably is maybe one of the best songs in the entire musical. It's so iconic. I'm like, hello ding dong, my name is Elder Green. I live in UK. I don't live in USA, especially nowhere near Utah. I don't really know what Mormonism is like. I've never met a Mormon, so I don't really know how accurate it is to portraying it. But like, you can get the general vibe of it. Now, I've had people, of course, go door to door, leave me, want to talk about, religion or something, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm like a 6-year-old kid. I don't really understand. Why did I open the door? Probably not a great idea. But it's a really iconic song and very catchy, I suppose. And the way it sort of bounces around between all the different people, I think is great. It's fantastic. It makes it like super engaging in the first place. It's a fantastic way to honestly kick off and set the pace of the entire musical. 2 by 2 I think is a nice sort of follow-up to that. I don't think it's as good as Hello, but it does have that same sort of like overly cheerful, happy sort of vibe. Like, you listen to it and you're like, man, this is like really unsettling, but like in it's like a happy dystopia, that sort of thing, Because when you say dystopia, people think of like this grim, dark nature, which it's not. It's all meant to be like sort of sunshines and rainbows, I suppose. But clearly, sort of people very, how do I say, deep set on their belief, I suppose, in the thing. Which, even if I don't know like basically anything about Mormonism, except for it's like an offshoot sort of Christianity which originated in the US or something, it very much conveys the point of like the vibe across. And then You and Me is also a really good one at like setting up like, hey, here are the main 2 characters. This one is like some overachiever, like arrogant one, and this one is going to be like the sidekick. Like You and Me is there to establish the dynamic between the main characters. And then Hasadiga Iboai is, I suppose, more of like a setting thematic, like when actually going to Uganda and seeing the sort of way of life. And I found it kind of interesting because obviously this entire musical is meant to sort of be portrayed from this sort of like very privileged perspective, right? That's kind of like modus operandi, I suppose, of the Mormons, of being like, hey, we want to spread the Mormon faith to people, something like that. That's what these missionaries are sent out to do on their holy mission, I suppose. But then like arriving in the country of like Uganda and like this very rural tribe, I assume, this rural village, the people there are just like, yeah, we have like way bigger problems to deal with right now than this, which is basically what this entire song is about, establishing like, hey, life freaking sucks, man. Like, I guess it's kind of meant to establish this thematic of like this sort of very, very privileged position compared to like actual difficult realities that people are dealing with, right? Also, it's obviously meant to, and I suppose cleverly in the same way, play off like Hakuna Matata, which is, you know, a Disney song which is from Lion King, which obviously has this sort of fantastical view, I suppose, and fantastical sort of view, and obviously also takes place in Africa. It's meant to be sort of like riffing off that, you know, it's like I suppose big business, you know, like Disney, you know, corporate business, playing off of this, I don't know, like playing off this aesthetic, and aesthetics not playing off of this like culture. It sort of feels wrong to say African culture because that's like an entire continent, you know. But I actually don't know specifically where Lion King takes place or what it's meant to be based off. It's meant to be playing off of that, I suppose, in the same way of like westernization, you know, with Africa, right? Taking this like cultural aspect from it for their own business, I guess, in this place. Instead of it being a business in Disney's case, it's being like Mormonism, I suppose, for the Church of Latter-day Saints or something like that. So honestly, does a great job of establishing everything that's going on. Very catchy, to be honest. Turn It Off is actually probably one of my favourite songs because it's so... I think it really adds like a huge amount of depth to these characters. I guess it like makes them feel much more human rather than them just being sort of like smiley faces of a cult. It's like, oh, these are like actual people with actual problems who have this sort of like brainwashed vibe to them in this like Mormonism sect, how should I say it, where it's just like over suppressing all these emotions and memories down, especially like the main elder McKinley, who is like a closeted gay man, and he just like is straight up like repressing everything, being like, I cannot feel any of these feelings, you know, otherwise I'm gonna burn in hell. And I think it adds a lot of depth to the characters, just being like, oh man, this like genuinely sucks for their situation. You sort of just want to be like, come on dude, it's fine to be gay. We're in 2024, we're LGBT positive now, friendly hopefully, but obviously, you know, different cultures, different circumstances, and obviously McKinley's upbringing not exactly safe for him to do stuff like that. I'm Here For You, don't really remember that song, but it's like we're singing just before bed, whatever. All American Prophet, this one's fine. This feels like the most musical-esque song in the musical, and by musical I don't mean like musical as in musicality, I mean musical as in like theatre production one, you know, the one which is like, hey, we need to like spread the plot, we need to extend the plot, let's do it through the song rather than like a song which is conveying a general theme, I suppose. Does that make sense? I never know how to explain it. It feels like it's a plot song rather than like a thematic song. Same with I'm Here For You. Salt Lake City is maybe my favourite song. I don't know, it's so like heartfelt, I suppose, obviously with a sort of like comedic premise in the first place, that it's just talking about Salt Lake City, which I'm not really sure like what the vibe is about Salt Lake City in America. I don't know like what the stereotypes are around it, but presumably it's just like it's the capital of Utah, right? So presumably it's just like a regular old like rural town or something, but this sort of like this heartfelt emotion of Nabalungi believing it to be like the sort of salvation paradise, but like her situation obviously in her life is terrible, but like this fabled Salt Lake City being a sort of salvation is, I don't know, I guess it's a one which evokes the most sort of emotion in a sort of way, being like having that sort of hope is like really admirable in a sense, but also the sort of like, as I say, dark comedy layered on top of it, where you're just like, oh, but like obviously the paradise that she's dreaming of is literally just like some random town, not a random town, but like some really average town, presumably in America. If anything, I guess it's kind of like quite sad as well, because it's sort of just like that's how terrible a situation they, and would she love like her, just like the average life, probably, possibly, I don't know. Obviously in the story of the Book of Mormon, the musical, like the situation they have in their village is pretty terrible, so whether that's, and as I say, is that an accurate portrayal of Uganda? Probably not. I'm not gonna like try and comment here being like, oh, this is what Uganda's like. I've never been, I don't know, well, I know a couple of people from Uganda, but not like particularly well, and I've already spoken about it, so it's not really my place to say. All I say about musically, that's a really moving song, to be honest, and probably my favourite. Man Up's a really fun one, fantastic way to sort of like end of Act 1, as it has a sort of like mashup of all the different songs coming together. It's really silly. It's over the top. I think nothing made me sort of like laugh more, or like... The most humorous moment I found of an entire musical was in this song, where he was just randomly singing when it's like, it's time to slay a monster, and a random monster comes out, and then Darth Vader comes out, and I'm just like, what's going on? Making things up again feels like another sort of plot song, to be honest. I don't know, but it sort of like helps ease you back into the start of Act 2. Spooky Mormon Hell Dream is actually a really, surprisingly really fun song. This is definitely like sort of dark comedy or whatever. Bringing out like some of the worst people, I suppose, in one. You know, it's very blue as well, like lewd, I suppose. So it's very much all played up for laughs. You'll find a lot in this musical tends to take, you know, things which actually have like a serious undertone to it, but also play it up for laughs at the same time, which I guess is kind of a point. It's a sort of movie which musical, but you look at it and be like, should I be laughing at this? I don't know. Sort of like that nervous laughter, right? But it's still very entertaining in its own right, and I guess if art is meant to make you feel emotions, very much does that here. I believe it's actually just like probably another very sort of musical theatrical song, but rather than being like a musical theatrical plot song, it's musical theatrical in the like musical theatrical over the top dramatic sense, right? I'm also seeing from this analysis that basically so many of these are meant to be like parodies of like other musical songs, which is, you know, fair. Like this entire musical almost feels like it's not the plot itself is a parody, but it's more like the backbone that it's relying on is a parody, right? But Baptize Me, definitely like meant to be like a romantic song, like a rather sexual song if anything, but just it's actually about baptism. I would say the performers look like they were having a great time performing it. So I'm Africa, I think, is meant to sort of like hammer in like this is a theme again of like these white Mormonisms, making it all of being very self-centered rather than as being like, you know, coming together and helping the people of this village have like hope and belief in the terrible situation that things can change. It's just like, hey, we did it, everyone. We saved these poor unfortunate people. Well, the poor unfortunate people just being like, we're actually just like people, you know, like trying to live our lives. And then it's obviously a song sort of parodying the mindset of like extreme privilege and like the sort of like salvation hero complex that's often portrayed in these things. Joseph Smith, American Moses was yeah, but this is kind of like a played for laughs like plot musical fit song. I don't know what else to say about it, to be honest. Tomorrow's the Latter Day, I don't even remember. That's a final one. Oh yeah, no, it's the one that's rounding up, which has a reprise of Hello, basically, or Big of Arnold, which is like a fun way to sort of like end it off. Like, you know, it's credit where credit due is this musical very much keeps its themes. I also like read other things about it. Is apparently they've like revamped it for this newer version, but like in the original version, it was like even more like controversial, I suppose. With like it's very, I would say, like, at least reading about it, seems like a very even worse poor taste portrayal of Africa. In this one, it sort of like shifts it the direction to, rather than being like haha, like punching down, in my opinion, punching down sort of humor, it becomes like, oh, you know, the problem is kind of like technology and the spread of misinformation, because it talks about how like this the beliefs, rather than coming from the people themselves, are like from these like spreading rumors on Facebook, which, you know, if you've been on Facebook, if you've been on most social medias, I think most people immediately, at least I immediately went, oh yeah, like, please don't take your information from there. And apparently she used to have a typewriter. Now she has an iPad, and she used to like write up the story, and then now she recorded the story like on video, and then like uploaded it to the Mormon Facebook page or something. So it's sort of like been modernized a bit, which is good, I think. You know, I don't see why musicals should always say things should always stay the same. You know, you can always modernize. It's a modern musical in the first place, so there's not really the argument of like classics here. You know, modernize it, make it a fit of the more relevant situations, I suppose. Now, I think how my friend sort of described it to me was like, oh, it's definitely I can't remember exactly what he said. And like two people I know had seen it before. One of them was someone like I said, yeah, it's like super dated like perspective. Well, okay, if you take it at face value, I think it's like, yes, there's a very super dated perspective of Africa, and it is. Like, there's no arguing about that. Like, obviously that is not an accurate portrayal. Hopefully that's not what people take away from it, but you know, even if there's other layers of being like, obviously that this musical was sort of like being written from this sort of privileged position and mocking that privilege, belief, and ideology and perspective, it still doesn't take away from the fact that that is how it is being portrayed in the first place, right? Does that make sense? I'm not sure. Because it, obviously, like, you get to the end and it's showing, like, oh, Ugandans are, like, obviously not meant to be just, like, punch down sort of jokes, that sort of thing. Because they're just like, oh, you know, like, what? Do you think all of the things that are said in the story actually happened? No, these are metaphors. These are just meant to be, like, express things to sort of mirror things and troubles that we have in our daily life, and we use the lessons we take from that to actually come together. And it actually ends on, like, surprisingly quite a happy sort of note, where it, like, the portrayal of religion is that, like, obviously the entire movie, I keep calling it a movie, musical, is spent, like, deriding Mormonism, right? It's, like, ridiculous. And, like, half of the things that they believe in, there's the entire song I Believe is just, like, the entire thing of being like, these beliefs are, like, completely unfounded, these are ridiculous, but, you know, he still believes them anyway. And it's meant to be, obviously, in the musical theme, portrayed in, like, oh, this is, like, his grand heroic moment, where you, with this dramatic irony, I suppose, as a listener, the audience watching in, being like, what? This is actually, like, legitimate beliefs. But sorry, tangent. What was I going to say? I actually completely forgot what I was going to say. Ugandans, understanding that it's a metaphor. And oh, yeah, and the final thing it sort of says is, like, while it's been deriding religion this entire time, it does sort of, like, acknowledge at the end that's, like, it's still something which can bring communities together. You know, there is sort of, like, this, like, ray of light within these communities which form around it. Is sort of like, hey, it brought people together, it brought people hope. You know, this is what it should be about, and it's a shame, you know, that the rest of the movie, it's a shame that the actual, like, consequences of it is portrayed as is reality, I suppose, in the rest of the musical. So I thought that was kind of interesting. It's clearly a musical which made me think, which, in my opinion, that's good art. Art that makes you think, art that makes you reconsider, like, your own biases, prejudices, perspectives, and things on life. Art that makes you sort of question things here and there. And that's actually a really great thing that dark comedy tends to do. Because, as I say, like, there are no sacred cows in comedy. But you have your own personal sort of boundaries and personal lines of things which you think are appropriate and not appropriate. But by examining and questioning these sort of things, like, these very dark comedies, you know, as I said before, like, moments of, like, should I be laughing at this? It can make you sort of, like, I know this is definitely, like, me overthinking these sort of things, but, you know, it made me sort of reevaluate, being like, should I be laughing at this? Like, is that appropriate? What are my own, like, personal boundaries of this? Like, am I even that place to say, am I overthinking this? Should I just be, like, shut off my brain and laugh? Is it because it's written with the perspective, like, with probably, I assume, written with good intentions, while mocking or derision of these sort of, like, cult-like beliefs? Like, does that excuse the other things? I don't know. I think that's for your own personal choice to decide whether it is or not. I'm not gonna, you know, I feel like there's enough on the internet of people policing exactly, being like, hey, this is appropriate, this isn't appropriate. I don't think I'm qualified enough to say. All I can really say is that the songs are pretty good, and it was a amusing watch. If it was amusing watch, I suppose. And yeah, I'm glad I got to see it. It's my favourite musical of all time. And my friend asked me that afterwards. I said, probably not. It might be one of, I don't even know if it's, I don't know if I watch many funny musicals, to be honest. Hold on. What's my favourite musical of all time? I'm not sure my favourite musical. Musical lists. I need to see, like, just like, oh, Hamilton was really good. Oh, no, I liked Wicked. I think Wicked's probably my favourite musical thus far. Defying Gravity is just such a good song. And that's probably why. I do like 6 as well for songs, but I haven't actually seen it, so I don't think it counts. Hamilton, of course, really good. Legally Blonde is also a really good one. Les Miserables I didn't actually like as much, to be honest. Mamma Mia is pretty fun. Anyway, I don't know. That's my thoughts of Book of Mormon. Or as, like, a random, off-the-cuff. I don't know if I even thought through things properly, to be honest. Mosquito, get out of here. Go watch if you want to. Don't watch it if you don't want to. That's what I'd say. Anyway, if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been here, darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope to see each other again, but for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now.